Hi, my name is Maddie Engel, and my partner and I, Kayla Lipsky, are going to discuss protections for patients with genetic predispositions.
So, our case is, should insurers have access to patients' genetic predispositions? And with access, there are increased risks of discrimination, limited autonomy, and increased cost. However, if there's no access, then there can be raised costs for all and limiting justice to low risk patients. So, Maddie is going to have a stance of, should patients choose to test and share the test results if they wish following consent law? My stance is that patients are required to share their genetic test results following duty to disclose.
So, my position is for consent law. So, what consent law is patients are allowed to go get genetic testing done, and they have the right whether to choose to disclose those results or whether to not disclose those results. And this protects patients' autonomy. They are able to know their genetic testing results, but they don't have to disclose that. And the reason why they may not want to disclose that is because insurance companies can actually increase billing and they can deny patients insurance. And so it gives those patients that right to know without having to disclose that information. It also makes it fair for them. So if they want to test and they don't have to disclose that information, it ensures justice by allowing fair insurance rates for them as well. So there are a few ethical principles that I thought were highly applicable to consent law. The four of them are autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. But I really wanted to touch on the justice, non-maleficence, and autonomy portions of it because I think that they really fit for my case. So we've already touched on justice a little bit. It's fairness to the patient. If a patient is genetically predisposed, they will have fairness in their billing and access to insurance. Non-maleficence, we don't want to do harm to the patient. And if a patient is discriminated against because of their genetic testing results, then we've definitely done harm to that patient. And then autonomy, patients should have the right to go get genetically tested and not disclose their results. They should be able to be active in their care without fearing for their insurance billing going up as well. Diving a little bit more into autonomy, this means that the patient has the choice to do what they want with their health data. Unlike duty to disclose, where if you get genetically tested, you have to disclose these results and it's mandatory. Patients should have the right to choose what is done with their health data, not only current uses, but future uses as well. And consent law helps with this by keeping patients completely autonomous and keeping out invasions of privacy. For example, if you go get genetically tested and you discover that you are at increased risk of Alzheimer's, you have the right to not disclose those results and prevent your billing from increasing with your insurance. So, talking a little bit more about justice, this is all about fairness and making sure that patients are billed fairly. And so, if you have genetic predispositions, consent law is going to help because you are still going to be billed fairly for something that you cannot help your genetic predisposition. So, it's going to ensure fairness to these patients. So, Posey and Thistle found that consent law and mandatory testing outcomes are actually equal, but consent law does not force individuals to participate in the genetic testing. So now I'm going to talk about non-maleficence or the prevention of harm with these patients. So I've already discussed that CL is going to help patients not to cause harm to them, and it's going to ensure fairness. And so I found a quote that I liked from a journal article, and I'm going to read it to you. It's simply stated, GD involves a differential, negative treatment, or unfair profiling of an individual relative to the rest of the population on the basis of actual or presumed genetic characteristics that is intended to infringe upon or has the effect of infringing human rights, fundamental freedoms, and human dignity. And I thought that this fit very well with the prevention of harm because if you have treated someone differently based on their genetic predispositions, you have definitely caused harm to that patient. And I think that this is something very important to recognize.
So the question is, what is duty to disclose? This is that patients are not required to test. However, patients who are tested are required to disclose their results. So the argument is that prevention of harm by reducing market risk. So high risk patients they could hide their genetic testing results. Promotion of justice, which with fair pricing will allow insurance companies to set fair pricing, and then supports beneficence by maintaining affordable markets with that fair pricing. The evidence is that duty to disclose is never Pareto-dominated and ensures efficient outcomes. So this means that no alternative policy can make individuals better off or worse off. So simply put, duty to disclose performs just as well as other policies economically. So our counter is supported in the article by Barty et al. The duty to disclose reverses adverse selection, so this prevents individuals from hiding bad genetic news, which leads to more accurate insurance pricing. In real world, test uptake under duty to disclose is very low, and this reduces the risk of discrimination. So under duty to disclose, individuals who don't test better than the CL, the pooling premium under CL becomes inflated. And this is done by hiding high-risk individuals. Therefore, individuals who do not test are better off under duty to disclose than the CL because the premium is not inflated by other high-risk individuals. Another aspect of our counter, which is duty to disclose, is that consent law enables unfair risk pooling by allowing individuals to withhold their genetic risk information. Ultimately, this undermines equity and distorts the insurance pool, and it raises premiums for everyone. This also puts a financial burden on low-risk individuals who have been transparent about their genetic information. And although this is framed as autonomy, consent law outcomes can be coercive in practice. And some evidence to back this up is that the opt-out feature allows individuals to withhold their genetic risk information, and this once again distorts the insurance pool and leads to those higher premiums. So the CL allowance for non-disclosure results in the disproportionate financial burdens on those low-risk individuals, and it makes the system less fair compared to the duty to disclose transparency. So since duty to disclose supports full disclosure, this enables insurers to price policies fairly and protect both the insurers and their responsible party holders.
So to rebuttal duty to disclose, there are some flaws that can be discussed. So this is going to harm high-risk patients with mandatory disclosure of genetic predispositions, which risk unaffordable premiums, and it's going to violate the non-maleficence portion of the argument. So it's going to actually hurt the people who are at high risk, which is not fair to these people. And there's also an unfair cost to high-risk patients, not just the low-risk patients. So while we do recognize and duty to disclose that these low-risk individuals should not have higher costs, these patients who are genetically predisposed should not have higher costs as well. And consent law has similar market stability, except without the coercion. So this is actually going to match the beneficence of duty to disclose. So the final stance is that we need to protect the autonomy of patients who are genetically predisposed, and we need to prevent harm of mandatory disclosure.
In conclusion, we can see that consent law protects autonomy, justice, and non-maleficence with patient choice, and it prevents discrimination. While duty to disclose promotes justice, beneficence, and non-maleficence while being transparent and promoting affordable markets. The takeaway is that both address genetic discrimination, but the consent law aligns better with the nursing ethical practices.
And these are our resources that we use to make our arguments. Thank you for watching.